Kenneth
係，多謝主席。嗱，其實我都想跟進翻頭先謝偉正議員講嗰個 QPS 嗰個制度啦。嗱，其實你睇到審計署長喺第2.35段第20頁嗰度呢，2.35段就列出呢就話呢，35歲以下嘅申請者呢，有34% 呢喺申請公屋時為學生，即係可能係大學生又得，讀緊就有啲甚至可能讀緊呢個研究院課程嘅。有47% 呢具專上或更高學歷，33% 為公屋住客。然而，在35歲以上申請人當中，只有7% 達專上或更高學歷。亦都睇一睇呢，喺表7嗰度睇到呢，我哋睇到其實喺30歲以下嘅申請者呢，係佔咗57%。57% 好多其實，即係話呢，我哋成日同事之間詬病房屋處房委會做得唔夠，就話點解我哋嘅申請嗰個輪候冊度有20幾萬人嘅？咁呢啲亦都係頭先有啲同事講咗，你哋係咪自己嚇自己呢？咁你都再睇睇表9喺23頁嗰度，表9 5年內根據配額及計分制獲得安置嘅人士呢，30歲以下呢係零嘅，係冇機會，絕無機會，係冇喺呢個 QPS 分配過任何單位嘅。嗱，當然呢，即係頭先處長講嘅就話呢，我哋唔可以剔除18歲以下嘅人士去申請個公屋，亦都有可能有個別好特別嘅例子，可能係咁嘅需要。但喺計分制度上呢，我覺得呢，你哋必須要全盤考慮，究竟我哋係咪仍然係用翻18歲去俾分佢哋呢？抑或根本其實好多人個心態就話有着數就排咗隊先啦。咁呢樣嘢其實係咧浪費咗好多資源，你哋去就算去攞即係去接受啲申請等等咧，係有5萬即係成55,000個申請表嘅，每年要接受呢一啲 QPS 入邊。你有冇考慮過從嗰個計分制嗰個全盤考慮，係令到真係有需要嘅，就算講緊18歲嘅申請者先正去申請呢？主席。
Director of Housing.
Mr. Chairman, as I say, I think you're absolutely right. It's a perspective thing. I mean, I could argue that if it's only 34% of students applying at the age of 18, then it means that 76% are not students. You know, the problem here is that we have a system that allows people to apply because they may have genuine housing needs. What we need to do, and what we've accepted and agree with the honourable member, is that we need to look at the list and basically take out those people who will never be eligible. And clearly, then we can look at perhaps setting a 30 or 35 as an appropriate age which we would look at this. But I think, as I say, I don't think it's appropriate for us to apply an arbitrary cut-off above that, because then we'd have to have special arrangements for special applications. It becomes more difficult. In terms of the criteria we might apply, we haven't quite got there yet, but we'll bear in mind members' comments. We're also waiting to hear what comments come back from the public as part of the long-term housing strategy review exercise.
As Director of Housing, the two members just asked questions relating to 18, which and the point system they can apply. And if you look into the table 9, what your argument itself is not holding, because none of the age that the two members suggested actually being allocated for housing. So what they're saying that you should, it's not that you don't receive special cases under 18 and over or under 30, but you are actually creating unnecessary hassles and wastage of resources to process those applicants that automatically at 18 they apply. These are the points that the two members are actually pointing out. And if you look at table 9, which actually reflected the whole situation,
sure.
Do you understand their questions?
I fully understand, but I repeat my point. I don't think we would want to exclude 18. We think it's better to take the 30 cut-off as the criterion on which we will rationalise the list. It's a slightly different approach. There's no difference in perception of the situation. We're just saying that we don't want to stop them applying if they really need to.
Thank you. Kenneth,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to continue to grill on this point, because we are not talking about excluding people above 18 to apply. But when Mr. Prescott told me that in 2.35a, that 34% of the applicants, when when they did the application, were students. That means 67% of those, when they did the application, were not students. But however, I need to point out that A, B, and C are not mutually exclusive, because out of the 67%, some may fall within this 47%, which means they may have higher qualifications, or when they are doing the application, they are already living in a public rented housing. This is not the argument I would like to accept. But the fact is, I think when designing the point system, you should give this incentive to people who are more eligible or who have the potential to move up the social strata. Maybe you can design a point system that is not positive points. Maybe you are trying to encourage people possessing university degrees or already living in housing estates, or people who are between the age of 18 and 24 to not applying so early. I mean, you should try not to build in an incentive system to encourage everyone, every Hong Kong citizen who has reached the age of 18 to apply for public housing, because that is not the crust of the design of a housing system.
Director of Housing, please, I must stress the point. We are not questioning the policy, but we are looking at it from a value from money audit point of view. You are wasting resources in processing unnecessary applications. We should not have been there because of the incentive you give under your present system. So please understand that this is where we are directing. We are not questioning your policy. That will be the housing panel. But because we are looking from a value for money audit. Can you understand that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in fact, the honourable member is quite right. People who are public housing tenants lose points. We actually take points off them. Because exactly for that reason, we don't want to have to encourage people. What we haven't yet got, and as I said, this is something we are definitely going to be looking at as a consequence of the recommendations arising from both the audit report and the LTHS, is should we have similar penalties applied to other criterion that exist in the list. Now, the only other two criterion must be, of course, age, clearly. PRH is already a penalty. And is there something else? Now, it could be education. Should we apply a penalty to education? So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. In fact, I'm agreeing with you to say, yes, this is exactly what we need to look at. It is something that we will be doing. We've had some initial thoughts about it. But at the moment, I have to stick to the line of 18 is the application year. Then how do we deal with the other part? So I don't think there's any difference here.
Okay, Kenneth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other thing you probably should consider would be that if these young applicants are living with their parents or the family, I mean, that should warrant the points deducted, because it doesn't matter whether they're living in public rental housing. If they are already having a decent accommodation, and that is something you need to consider. But with your agreement, Mr. Chairman, I do not think I have any question on Chapter 2, but I don't know whether the other members would have a question on Chapter 2. With your permission, can I move to Chapter 3?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I just answer that last point, please, on this Chapter 2? I accept that we can look at different criteria. However, just living with someone doesn't necessarily mean that the conditions they're living in is acceptable. And the problem is you then have to look at the conditions. You have to do a lot more drilling down into the circumstances. That's why we've applied the PRH as acceptable housing. That's the standard. So I'm not sure we'd be able to follow that last suggestion.
Okay. 各位